I never thought I'd start my new year by exposing a lie, but there I was, clutching an envelope filled with bank statements at my in-laws' annual party. The Matthews family always made a big show of their New Year's Eve gathering: crystal champagne flutes, expensive decorations, and enough food to feed half the neighborhood. But this year, something felt different. My husband, James, and I had arrived early to help set up. His mother, Diana, was directing the preparations like a military operation, barely acknowledging my presence as she fussed over the elaborate appetizer display. After 5 years of marriage, I was used to her cold shoulder, but tonight she seemed unusually smug. "James, darling," she called out, ignoring me completely. "Park the Mercedes around back. We don't want it blocking the driveway when guests arrive." She emphasized Mercedes like it was a personal victory. I frowned, thinking about the car payments that had been straining our budget for months. James caught my eye and quickly looked away, something he always did when he was hiding something. That's when I first felt the knot form in my stomach. The guests started arriving at 8, filling the massive colonial house with chatter and laughter. Diana's social circle consisted mostly of country club members and her charity board friends, people who measured worth in designer labels and square footage. I stood in a corner, nursing a glass of champagne, watching Diana work the room. "Oh, you must see the gorgeous car I bought James and Kate for Christmas," I overheard her telling her friend Margaret. "A mother must take care of her children, you know." I nearly choked on my drink. The car she bought us? The same car we'd been making payments on since September. Before I could process this, James's sister Emma appeared beside me. "That was so generous of Mom, wasn't it?" "The car?" She smiled, but there was something knowing in her expression. "Though I'm surprised she went with silver. Mom usually insists on black for luxury cars." My head was spinning. I excused myself and went to the home office, where I kept my emergency folder in my purse. I always carried important documents to family gatherings. 5 years of Diana's manipulations had taught me to be prepared. The bank statements were clear: $800 monthly payments from our joint account to Mercedes-Benz Financial Services. Every payment made by us. Not a single cent from Diana. I was still staring at the papers when James found me. "Hey, what are you doing in here?" "Mom's about to make her annual New Year's toast." "James," I said carefully, "did your mother tell you she bought our car?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Well, she said she wanted to help with it." "Help how?" "We've been making every payment ourselves. I have the statements right here." Before he could respond, Diana's voice rang through the house. "Everyone, gather in the living room." James grabbed my hand. "Let's talk about this later, okay? You know how Mom gets about her New Year's speech." I allowed him to lead me to the living room, but I brought my folder. Diana stood by the fireplace, champagne in hand, looking every bit the wealthy matriarch in her designer dress and signature pearls. "As we welcome another year," she began, "I want to thank everyone for being here. Family is everything to me, and I'm blessed to be able to support mine." She smiled at James, "Like the beautiful new Mercedes I got my son and his wife for Christmas." The room erupted in murmurs of approval. James squeezed my hand harder, silently begging me to stay quiet. "Would you like to say something, son?" Diana prompted, basking in the admiration of her guests. James stood, pulling me up with him. "Yes, actually," he smiled nervously. "I want to thank Mom for the car. It's really something." That's when something in me snapped. 5 years of swallowing Diana's lies, of watching her manipulate James, of being treated like an outsider. It all boiled over. "What car, James?" I asked, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. Diana's perfectly maintained smile faltered. "Kate dear, the Mercedes you've been dragging. No need to be modest." I opened my folder slowly, deliberately. "You mean the car we've been making $800 monthly payments on since September? That car." The room grew so quiet you could hear the antique grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Diana's face flushed red, then pale. "I have all the statements right here," I continued, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "Every payment made from our account. So I'm curious, Diana, where exactly did the money you're claiming to have spent on our car actually go?" James stared at his mother, realization dawning on his face. "Mom? What's going on?" Diana's champagne glass trembled slightly. "This is hardly the time or place for such discussions. We're celebrating the new year." "No," James said, his voice stronger now. "I want to know. You told me you bought us that car. You said that's why you needed access to my trust fund last fall. And there it was, the real bombshell. I watched Diana's perfect facade crack as her son finally started asking the right questions. This wasn't just about a car anymore. This was about years of financial manipulation, and I had a feeling we were just scratching the surface. The grandfather clock struck 11, marking an hour until the new year. But for the Matthews family, everything had already changed. As I stood there holding our bank statements, I realized this was just the beginning of a very different kind of celebration, one where long-buried truths would finally come to light. The silence in the room was shattered by Diana's nervous laughter. "James, darling, you're misunderstanding everything. Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "No, Mom," James's voice was firm. "You made this public by announcing it to everyone. So let's be public about all of it." He turned to me. "Kate, what else is in that folder?" I hesitated for a moment, not because I was unsure, but because I knew what was coming would change everything. "I have statements from the trust fund account, the one your father set up before he passed." Diana's sister Caroline suddenly stood up. "I think we should give the family some privacy." But Diana, surprisingly, stopped her. "No, stay. Since my daughter-in-law wants to air our private matters, let's have it all out." Her voice had taken on a dangerous edge. "After all, I have nothing to hide." I pulled out another set of documents. September 15, $45,000 withdrawn from James's trust fund. Supposed to be for our Mercedes. September 16, $45,000 deposited into an account at First National Bank. I looked directly at Diana. "An account in your name only." James stepped closer to me, looking at the papers. "There's more, isn't there?" he asked quietly. I nodded. August, $30,000 withdrawn for home repairs. July, $25,000 for medical expenses. May, $50,000 for investment opportunities, all transferred to the same private account. The room erupted in whispers. Diana's perfect society friends were getting quite a show, and I could see their phones itching to spread this gossip through their elite circles. "I can explain everything," Diana said, but her voice had lost its usual authority. "The market has been volatile, and I was protecting our family's interests by gambling it away at Riverside Casino." I asked softly. The champagne glass finally slipped from Diana's hand, shattering on the marble floor. James's sister Emma gasped. "How dare you?" Diana's voice shook. "You've been investigating me?" "No," I replied. "The casino sent a congratulatory letter to our house by mistake last month. Apparently, he used our address when you signed up for their High Rollers program. They were very detailed about your gaming history." James sank into a nearby chair, his face ashen. "Mom, please tell me this isn't true." Diana's carefully constructed world was crumbling, and she did what cornered people often do. She attacked. "None of this would have happened if you'd married someone from our circle, James. Someone who understands our way of life." She pointed at me accusingly. "Instead, you brought this accountant who keeps spreadsheets of everything." "Thank God she did." Emma suddenly spoke up. "Mom, did you do the same thing with my trust fund?" The color drained from Diana's face. "And mine?" Tom, James' younger brother, stepped forward. I pulled out more papers. "I have those statements too. I got them when James gave me power of attorney last month." Diana whirled on her son. "You gave her power of attorney?" "Behind my back. Because I finally started noticing things weren't adding up," James said, standing taller. "The car was just the final piece. You've been gaslighting all of us for years, making us think we were crazy for questioning where the money went." The antique clock struck 11:30. In 30 minutes it would be a new year, but the Matthews family would never be the same. "I want a full accounting," Emma demanded. "Every penny from all our trust funds. And explanations for every withdrawal," Tom added. Diana looked around the room, at her carefully cultivated social circle watching her downfall, at her children united against her, at me standing there with the evidence of her deception. Her mask finally cracked completely. "I'll pay it all back," she whispered. "I just need time, one more big win." "No," James cut her off. "No more gambling. No more lies." He turned to the remaining guests. "Thank you all for coming, but I think it's best if we end the party early." As the shocked guests filed out, some barely concealing their glee at the drama, I watched my mother-in-law sink into her favorite armchair, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her. The perfect Matthews family facade had shattered like Diana's champagne glass on the marble floor. But as I looked at James, standing tall and finally free from his mother's manipulation, I knew that sometimes things need to break before they can be rebuilt stronger. The new year was coming, and with it, a reckoning that was long overdue. The first day of the new year dawned cold and gray, fitting for the conversations ahead. We'd spent the night at a hotel, none of us able to stay in that house after everything that had unfolded. James barely spoke, processing the weight of his mother's betrayal. By noon, we were all gathered in Diana's living room again. James, Emma, Tom, their spouses, and Diana, who sat rigidly in her chair, looking like she aged a decade overnight. The family lawyer, Mr. Patterson, had joined us at James' insistence. The total amount withdrawn from the combined trust funds over the past 2 years, Mr. Patterson began, adjusting his glasses, comes to approximately $780,000. Emma let out a choked sob. Her husband gripped her hand tightly. Of that amount, he continued, we've traced about $650,000 to various casinos and online gambling sites. The remaining funds were used for. He paused, glancing at Diana. Personal expenses. Designer clothes and spa treatments, I added quietly, holding up the credit card statements. All while telling us the trust funds were being invested in real estate. Diana sat straight-backed, her pride still intact even as her world crumbled. I was going to win it back. I had a system. A system? Tom laughed bitterly. That was our future, Mom. My kid's college fund was in that trust. We can press charges, Mr. Patterson said carefully. The power of attorney was violated, and there's clear evidence of fraud. The room fell silent. Despite everything, we all knew what criminal charges would mean. The final destruction of the Matthews family name that Diana had worked so hard to protect. James stood up slowly. No charges. Everyone started to protest, but he held up his hand. But there will be conditions. He walked over to his mother, and for the first time, I saw him tower over her instead of cowering under her manipulation. First, you'll sign over the house. It'll be sold to start repaying what you took. Second, you'll seek treatment for your gambling addiction. Real treatment, not some spa retreat you can twist into another social status symbol. Third, you'll have no access to any family finances. Ever again. Diana's lips trembled. Where am I supposed to live? The lake house, Emma said firmly. It's small, remote, and most importantly, far from any casinos. And your social circle, I added. The ones you were trying so hard to impress, they're part of the problem. Diana looked around the room, at the children she'd manipulated and betrayed, perhaps truly seeing them for the first time. I never meant. I just wanted. To keep up appearances, James finished. But look what it cost us, Mom. Not just the money, but the trust, the relationship we could have had. Tears finally broke through Diana's perfect makeup. I'll sign whatever you want, she whispered. Mr. Patterson produced the papers, and within an hour, the great Matthews estate had a for sale sign on its lawn. Diana's hands shook as she signed away her power of attorney, her access to accounts, her carefully constructed world. As we helped her pack for the lake house, I found the Mercedes papers in her study, the real ones, showing our payments, not her fictional gift. James took them from me, staring at the evidence of one of his mother's smaller lies. You knew, he said softly. You knew something was wrong all along. I nodded. But you needed to see it for yourself. Some truths have to be discovered, not told. Later that evening, as Diana's car disappeared down the driveway toward her new, simpler life, James turned to me. Thank you, he said, for keeping those records, for being strong enough to speak up, for, he gestured at the house, ending the cycle. I took his hand, remembering the frightened woman I used to be, the one who would shrink under Diana's criticism. Sometimes love means standing up to family, not just standing by them. Emma and Tom joined us on the porch, watching the sunset on this first day of the year. The magnificent house behind us would soon belong to someone else. But maybe that was fitting. The Matthews family didn't need grand facades anymore. Happy New Year, Tom said quietly, and we all smiled at the irony. It wasn't the new beginning Diana had planned, but it was the one we all needed. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as losses, and the strongest families are built from the ashes of broken illusions. As we locked up the house one last time, I thought about the Mercedes in our driveway, the car that had started this whole revelation. Maybe we keep it after all. Not as a symbol of Diana's false generosity, but as a reminder that the truth, no matter how difficult, is always worth the price.